Today, we are discussing cloning. Our guests today are River, Darby, Aaron, and Paul. First to speak is Paul. Paul, what's your stance?
Thank you, Travis. The first point I would like to make is that bad genetics could just be buffered out through the process of cloning, specifically through genetic engineering. Bad genes could just be altered or generally changed as to make the line of humans or that generation that's being cloned altogether more resilient to disease and other imperfections.
Will cloning not just create all humans the same? Because disease and all that stuff is what makes us an individual, so why would we want to rid that of people?
Well, you see here, so what does individually really matter in the face of surviving through our generations? I mean, isn't the whole point of being alive just to make sure our species continues as a whole?
But don't we want to continue on, doing things that we want to do and having, thoughts of our own and all that stuff? So why would we want to not have what is destined for us to have?
I mean, it doesn't really make much sense in the face of that if we're dying by the hundreds of thousands every day. I don't think it's worth it to just have free will, or not free will, but individuality in the face of all this pain and suffering. For example, if I were to, say, clone a human being and remove all the genetic imperfections, if I was born with some kind of debilitating disease, I could have, say if I had contracted heart disease or something, I could take the genetically modified clone's heart and replace mine with it, and I could live longer and be more beneficial.
This organ cloning is not right or ethical, and it's not even that. It's not safe. Organ cloning would just take the human beings as product, use human beings as products, or whatever animal you wish to use. It just misuses them and their purpose. And not only that, but if you're using human beings like that, that leads to dehumanizing of just the human value. Dehumanizing humans is just, you're taking everything we stand for and just getting rid of it. Charles Nothammer said, cloning means the routinization, the commercialization, and the commodification of the human embryo. This leading that there will soon be embryo industries in which there will be egg prostitution or even womb slavery. And through this, it just takes something precious to us now and turns it into an industry, which is not something we need.
Cloning doesn't necessarily have to be devolved into an industry. It doesn't necessarily mean that just that cloning is there doesn't mean that somebody has to utilize it negatively. Cloning could be used for positive things. Egg prostitution, I don't see that happening.
And do these clones even have to really be human? Can't they be lobotomized at birth, and then from then on they wouldn't even really be human anymore? They would just be machines that work for us and do whatever we need them to do, basically.
Clones have feelings. Who are we to say that they wouldn't, because they're created from specific cells from living human beings? They also have working brains and beating hearts and that are completely different and give them feelings and emotions just like we have.
But would that even matter at this point? If they're raised as cattle, would they not act as cattle? If we didn't teach them any language or have them learn anything or even give them the choice to leave or anything like that, would they not even want the choice? If they didn't know the choice, would they even want it?
But how are they not to know the choice? Somewhere out there they'll find out. There's too much out there for them not to find out that there's a different way of perceiving things. And by finding out, then they would kind of put their own feelings and emotions towards what's going on with them.
And then just to get this process of all doing the things with the clones, the process is just cruel and brutal and should not be a thing. Throughout doing this, for example, when creating Dolly, there were 276 fails. The success rate for any kind of cloning is 0.1 to 3%, and not only and to add on to that, clones have a low lifespan and just generally die cruel deaths. That's not something that should be done. If we're going and killing things and just constantly failing and just killing babies practically, it's not ethical to do.
Well, I don't know if I can agree with that. It doesn't necessarily have to be brutal. Cloning, sure. If, as Travis said, we would lobotomize them at birth, they wouldn't have any feelings. They couldn't feel. They would be brain dead. They couldn't do a single thing about it. They would be breathing organ coolers. Well, I mean, in addition to all of that as well, there are stem cells, and we could potentially just utilize developing clones, harvest stem cells from them, and use that as a way to expand stem cells. That leads me to my next point, reproductive cloning. If a parent wanted, or if a certain set of individuals or a single individual wanted to produce a child, but they were infertile or they had no other way to, or they didn't want the burden of carrying it, they could produce a child through cloning. It would just be convenient for them, and there might not be any other way. If they didn't want to adopt, if they wanted to be of their own lineage, or even them or themselves, they could just have that done.
This cloning, it's not safe. Dr. Zavos, a professor, attempted this and he failed. And those women were not in good condition. Something like this is just does not need to be done. The ethics in it are just terrible. It takes something good and destroys it. We do not need to do this kind of thing. The cloning and these babies and everything, it takes away the humanity. And
I guess along with that, I mean, just imagine if they could still feel pain or anything like that. I guess that would still be bad. I mean, assuming if they don't get lobotomized, what if they still feel pain?
Well, I'm assuming we would somehow develop a way, if that were ever an issue, to make it where the clone cannot feel pain. We would remove that part of the brain from even the DNA, so they wouldn't actually be able to feel pain. They wouldn't be able to process it. And furthermore, looking into genetics research from cloning has indicated that there are ways to turn off cell reproduction, which could be a viable means to stopping cancer before that even becomes an issue.
Well, that's the end of today's show. Who won the debate? You can decide. It's up to you. So next week, we'll be discussing, does Mr. Harrell have a gun in his safe?